In episode 6, Maul, Bagra, and Alina all head out to try to find the Firebird. In order to do that, they're going to have to head to Morizova's workshop. On the way over, Alina tells Bagra that she needs some sort of weapon, like the cut. And Bagra says the cut is always there. It's there when you need it. All it requires is practice. On the way to Morizova's, they make camp for the night, and Bagra tells both Alina and Maul the backstory of Morizova. She knows it all too well because she is Morizova's daughter, one that he hated. The version that everybody knows about Morizova is that he was bound in chains and thrown in the river to drown because he resurrected a farm boy that was cut in half. And that story is only half true. What actually happened was it wasn't a farm boy who was resurrected, it was Bagra's sister, one that Morizova cherished. Bagra's sister broke something and she just lashed out, cutting her in half. After that, Bagra was banished because they just thought that she was a loose cannon that they couldn't handle. The next day, they arrive at Morizova's workshop, and in order to get in, you have to have Morizova's blood. So Bagra cuts herself, she pushes on the stone, and it reveals the workshop entrance. When they get in, it's not just papers and scribblings, it's also tombs. One for Bagra's sister, and one for her mother. Maul mentions how he can't hear any frequency, and the frequency was what led him to finding the stag and the sea whip. And Bagra says, "Follow me," and then she looks at Alina and says, "You stay here." But before Maul does leave the room, Alina needs to make up with him. She reminds him that the power of the Firebird is important, but more than anything, she wants Maul. She reaffirms how important he is to her, and the feeling is very mutual. He then goes and follows Bagra. She makes Maul open her sister's tomb, and there's nothing inside other than the toy that her sister broke, which resulted in Bagra killing her. For 400 years, Bagra had suspected that her sister was never actually buried in that tomb. Morizova was able to resurrect his daughter using finger bones. His daughter was the third amplifier, and that girl passed on the Firebird through generations because the Firebird isn't a thing, it's a bloodline. She then looks at Maul and says, "There was no Firebird, at least not the one you're looking for." And that's because Maul is the Firebird. It makes sense about why he was able to find the stag and the sea whip and what ultimately attracted him to Alina when they were children. Something about that home that Alina was living in felt like home to him. Maul is in complete shock. He doesn't really believe it, so she takes him outside, pricks his finger with blood, and he is able to open up Morizova's workshop, just like she was. Even after he does this, Maul is still in complete shock. Bagra tells him, "You must sacrifice yourself upon her blade, or the fold will remain." But as they're discussing this outside, Kurgan visits Alina to brag about the fact that her little plan didn't work and they're still tethered. He destroyed the first army base at Karamzin. And Karamzin is where Alina and Maul grew up. What he's planning to do is test all the orphans, take the Grisha, and kill the rest. But he's willing to give her one chance in order to save all of them. Alina, though, is not about to bargain with Kurgan, and she ends up getting saved by Bagra, who walks in along with Maul and sees that Alina is in that sort of energy-like aura that only a conversation between Alina and a tethered Kurgan can have. Bagra tells Maul, "I'm ending this once and for all," and she starts to light the little cave on fire. She tells Maul to grab Alina and take her. She then steps in and grabs Alina's arm, which all of a sudden now she's in this conversation. She's also tethered with them. And it's shocking to Alina and Kurgan. It distracts Kurgan enough to let Alina go, and Maul grabs her and takes her outside. Now that it's just her and her son, Bagra attacks herself with the cut, as Kurgan yells for her to stop. He doesn't want to see his mother die. When she drops to the ground, he grabs her, and while she's clinging to life, she uses her last bit of magic to cut his hand off, the same hand that had remnants of the stag. This should break the tether between Alina and Kurgan. Once Kurgan is able to calm down and register the fact that he watched his mother die in his arms, he visits Vadim because he's got to figure out a way to get this hand reattached. Vadim has used some of Bagra's finger bone to amplify himself, but so far, Vadim has felt nothing. He's going to use some of the remaining bone dust to fuse the arm to the wrist. When he does this, though, it works, but it also gives Kurgan a look at what Bagra was doing for the last 24 hours. And Kurgan sees that she tells Maul, "You are the Firebird." So now Kurgan knows. Maul, though, has yet to tell Alina as they try to make their way back to meet up with Nikolai and his group, who have arrived at a fort and are going to join forces with the First Army and the Second Army. Nikolai is now king because his brother died in the attack and his father also died in the attack. And we're going to find out if Alina was right when she said, "You're going to make a great king," because he's in for a battle of his life with Kurgan attacking a First Army base. They know that Kurgan isn't too far away, and they have to prepare for battle. As they're preparing, Alina and Maul walk back in, and they give the update that they lost Baghra. She's gone. But Alina proudly says, the good news is Maul knows where the Firebird is, and Maul is trying to shut her up because he wants to have this conversation privately. When they finally do get alone, Maul tells Alina the news, and she takes it about as well as you would expect someone to take the news of, hey, I'm that thing you're looking for, and you have to kill me. She's not about it. What she is about is getting a little Firebird beak. The two have sex. And she radiates a power, a red power. But she is also not about to kill Maul. That's not in the cards for her. She's got to find another way. Another option she has is the sword, and the crows are looking for it. But it's not going well for the crows. They're being poisoned. They're pretty much all knocked out, and they're having fever dreams. Some are good, like Jesper's, and some are complete nightmares, like Kaz. Luckily, though, not everybody went in. Wylan, in particular, did not go in, and he's their last-ditch hope. As he's looking at some very rare butterflies, he realizes that he hasn't heard any noise from inside in a while. He's concerned. He tries to blow the door open, but he's unable to. He is, however, able to blow a hole in the door, and he can see in and see that these people are not doing well at all. Wylan starts calling for them to wake up, and Inej does that. She tells him that they're being poisoned, and Wylan thinks fast and grabs those very rare butterflies because he thinks that the poison is coming from a flower just outside. And the butterflies are rare because they're able to eat that poison and not die. So he starts handing her butterflies to eat, and it works. One by one, all of them start coming back, and they get an immunity to this poison. Now they just have to wait for Oval to come back. A short time later, she does, and they're all playing possum. And Inej is actually hiding out in the ceiling to attack. But Oval is really, really good. She's able to hear the normally silent Inej, and she starts fighting her off. That's when all the crows try to attack her, but it turns out she's got Grecian powers. And she's really, really good at it. She starts bending Jesper's gun, and is even so powerful that she's able to cripple them using iron in everybody's bloodstream. But the one person she forgets about is Kaz, who ends up going into the house and finding Oval's weakness. It's her husband. It turns out he is the disciple, although he's a long way from being that person. He's old, he looks like he's got dementia, and he's on the way out. When Kaz wheels him outside, Oval just freezes. She turns to everybody and says he's not part of this, but now he is. The disciple admits that he did in fact steal the sword, but then he reveals something shocking. He stole it for Oval, who made it. That 400-year-old legend turned out not only is it true, but the person who made that sword is Oval. To a guy like Toya, who is Shu, this is like meeting a living god. He bows, he tells her what an honor it is to be in her presence, and he's shocked. But all she really cares about is the disciple and his safety. They make the pitch to her to just give them the blade, but she's very hesitant to do that. They explain the severity of the situation, that they're going to give it to the Sun Summoner, who can save Ravka and hopefully unite Ravka and Shu. It's Toya who brings up the fact that the Sun Summoner is part Shu. And then he promises that if she does give the blade to them, that he will make sure it returns home to its rightful place, with her. Oval eventually comes around and agrees, but she agrees only to give it to Jesper. She wants to give it to him because he's a Durest, just like her. But he's a terrible Durest, according to her. She noticed that he could have came at her in a number of ways using different metals, but he didn't. And as she tells him, life's too short to waste the talents of a Durest. Up until this point, he had kind of been ashamed of it. But now he realizes the importance of actually harnessing his skills and improving on them. He also thanks her because the fever dream he had featured his mother. And he hasn't seen his mother in a long, long time. Now with the sword in their possession, they have to head back to East Ravka. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.